Good morning, VUT. Morning. Sounds a lot better, trust me, sounds a lot better. I am Ashley. I go by the name Ashley Chwenimang, and I have a very difficult surname. He's been having a problem pronouncing my surname a lot. We are your hosts for today. We are your MCs for this wonderful event where we're celebrating Africa. And he shall introduce himself. Hi.
Mulweni? Sabona. Bonjour, mesdames, mesdemoiselles, messieurs. Bonjour. Je vous souhaite bienvenue. I hope nobody got confused in any way.
No, we totally understand. All right, so since we're celebrating Africa Day, I hope, how many of us are dressed in our African clothing or African themed outfits? Just by show of hands. She's wearing a sweater, she has her hand up. I see you, girl, I see you. I'm gonna ask you guys to greet me back in your indigenous languages. Shall we do that? All right, I'm gonna greet you in Setswana, and
I'll greet you in French.
And you just shout whatever language or whatever greeting it is, okay? Dumelang? I heard a hello, guys. I heard a hello. I'm sure I heard a hello. Dumelang?
Bonjour à vous tous.
No.
In French, greet me back in your own language.
Bonjour. Dumelang. Molweni. Okay, that's as far as I go, unfortunately, and that's a bad. I need to be slapped on the wrist. But yes, VUT, we're celebrating Africa Day, of course, and I hope you guys are ready for the great program which we've got for today. We're celebrating Africa Day under the theme of convergence of social justice and African languages, and that is why we're emphasizing that you greet us back in your home language so that we know you are proud and If you don't understand, guys, it's Africa Day. I'm allowed to confuse everybody.
Okay, you know, it's a blessing to be an African. It's not easy to be an African. Ask the astronauts. When they are leaving space, coming back to Earth, the first thing they see down there is Africa. So we must be proud to be Africans. Whether you are from Soweto or Morocco, from Gambia to Zambia, from Mali to Malawi, we are all Africans, and we must be proud of who we are. We are the only continent in the world that God used as a blueprint while creating the other continents. So we must be very proud of who we are. So if you are sitting here today and you are a proud African, please give yourself a round of applause.
It is not easy at all, is it? Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to welcome our dignitaries who are with us on stage. Please give them the warmest welcome ever. A good round of applause. Thank you very much for joining us. And as we continue with the program, in fact, as soon as we start with the program, you will get to learn each and every one of them who will be joining us on stage and celebrating Africa with us. We're going to start, of course, with the first item, which is provided and rendered by the VUT choir. They look absolutely amazing. Can we give them a round of applause? Amazing. So yes, they're going to sing the national anthem, and then right after that, sing the AU anthem. And if you do know the lyrics, and please do sing along, and let's just keep quiet and respect both the anthems as they are being rendered. Thank you. Can we show our respect by standing? Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Africa, my roots, Africa, my origin. That is who we are. We are Africans, and we will always live to be Africans. Thank you very much, choir.
Yes.
As we welcome our VC, we'll beg the choir to introduce him with 2 more items. I think 6 years ago, I saw myself in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. The taxi that carried me was playing Black Mambazo, and I was a bit surprised. I asked the driver, I said, do you understand what they are saying? He turned, he's an Ethiopian. He said, my brother, I can't understand what they are saying, but I can feel them right here. That is who we are.
Yes, that is
we
the power.
We feel each other right here. Everywhere we don't understand what we say, but we are feeling you right here. Thank you very much, choir.
Give them a round of applause. They are VUT choir. Absolutely phenomenal. I was taken aback by that performance. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask you one more time to give a round of applause to our incoming Vice Chancellor and Principal at the Vaal University of Technology. Ladies and gentlemen, give a round of applause to Professor Gordon N. Zide. Give a round of applause.
Thank you very much, program directors, it would appear. Mine is a very short one. It is indeed to welcome everybody to this august ceremony. I like, and I always say that in the EDSU language, when you greet a person and you recognize him or her, whether it is singular or plural, when it is singular, you say sawubona. I expect you to respond. Yes. And when it is plural, you say sanbonani. The beauty about that is that when you say sawubona, you don't necessarily say I see, but you say I recognize you. And when it is plural, you say, I recognize you all. And so as you are gathered here, I want to take this opportunity to indeed say, I recognize all of you. But most importantly, there are few people whom I have to mention. Dr. Munene Mwaniki, who's going to give a keynote address from the University of Free State. He is going to be introduced at an appropriate time, but I think mine is simply to recognize his presence. And then, of course, we've got His Majesty Mr. Abdi Halane Hersi, who is the Cultural Attaché, Embassy of Federal Republic of Somalia. Shall we give them a big round of applause? And then we have Ms. Phoebe Potrita Gobule, former African Union Deputy Chief of Staff, and she is amongst us. But before I ask her to rise, I also want to claim that she is in fact my daughter-in-law. You will be surprised why I say so. I say so because her father-in-law, even though he was quite senior to me, was my best friend. When we were students at Fort Hare, way back, before some of you were born, we used to toy, and when the police would chase us, we would run to Federal Seminary, which was just about a kilometer away from Fort Hare. And Reverend Dr. Professor Simon Gobule was the principal of the seminary. And so as we would be running for sanctuary there, he would come out with a placard, and he would go to the gate, allow us in, but when the police come, he will say, dogs and policemen are not allowed in the Holy Land. So they will turn away, and then we will, get protected. So, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce Ms. Phoebe Potrita Kubule. Could you rise? Thank you very much. I also want to recognize the presence of Mr. Midupe, the Student Representative Council, Vaal University of Technology. He is in our midst, and I want to recognize the presence of Mr. George Mvalo, the Director General of Social Justice and Transformation at the Vaal University of Technology. You are recognized, sir, and I want to recognize Mr. Wiseman Jack, who is the Executive Director, International Office. Say you are recognized, and also Reverend Dr. Chiu, am I right? Yeah, you are recognized. Please give all of them a big round of applause. I hope there isn't one person whom I have not recognized, because I recognized all of you. I said Sanbonani, and I mentioned, a few of our colleagues here, visitors, guests, ladies and gentlemen. You are all indeed recognized. Allow me just to say a few words of welcome. An Africa Day is a very important day in the history of the African continent. And I want to start off by saying, as Africans, what is at the center of us being Africans is a philosophy which is an embodiment of our Africanism. And that philosophy is, I am because you are. That is about Ubuntu. You go from Cape to Cairo, that principle of Africanism will always be there. That is why even Thabo Mbeki, when the South African Constitution was adopted, he eulogized his now very famous speech of I am an African. And I'm not going to dwell much on it because you know what he said. I am an African. But most importantly, what he said was that we are all of the African continent, and we are Africans. And in the true sense of an Africanism, there has never been any xenophobic attack. So this xenophobic attack is something that is very foreign to Africa, because we are. And then, of course, King Sobhuza II, in a book written by Prophet Landandwe, explains the philosophy of that great son of Africa, who studied at Lovedale, by the way, in Alice, way back. And the book simply describes his deep-rooted Africanism, because the title of the book is Akusiko Kwami Kwebantu. It is not about me, it is about people. And so this greed and voraciousness, which seems to be ravaging Africa, is something very foreign. Actually, it is something that came with the imperialists from Great Britain. In fact, I hesitate to say Great Britain because who gave them the title that they are great? They are not great than any one of us. And so the values which are the embodiment of Africanism are Ubuntu, integrity, morality, diversity, and honesty. What we are planning to do, our honorable guests, at the Vaal University of Technology, we are going to take each and every one of these values, dissect, discuss them, and say on a monthly basis, when we're talking about integrity, as Africans, what does that mean to us, as an individual, as well as a collective? And then, of course, the African continent is the hub of African intelligentsia. It is the hub of African human capital. That is why there is a fallacy which says that African, or shall I say, industrialization came from Great Britain. It didn't. Actually, they came here and stole ideas from Africa. to make African ideas their own ideas. It is not true that urbanization came from the West. That is, in fact, underscored by Klaus Schwab in his book. And Klaus Schwab, by the way, is the founder and the executive chairperson of the World Economic Forum. And in his book, The Fourth Industrial Revolution, identifies 3 challenges which we as Africans will have to discuss at some other stage. That is about modernization, westernization, innovation, as well as industrialization. There are challenges which face us as an African continent. And by the way, in the olden days of the original African continent, these challenges were never known because we were our brothers' keepers. And what are these challenges? We speak about them almost every day. Poverty, inequality, and unemployment. When we were our brothers' keepers in the olden days, where we used to take care of the person next door, there was no poverty, there was no inequality, there was no unemployment, because we were our brothers' keepers. So it is important, ladies and gentlemen, to understand where we're coming from as Africans. In Africa, we cry for one another. In Africa, we rejoice with one another. And in Africa, we recognize the beauty of equality. Let me therefore conclude by quoting myself when I say here, as we grow older and develop one another, we should grow Africa from good to great, from great to awesome, from awesome to auspicious, from auspicious to ostentatious, from ostentatious to incredible, from incredible to remarkable, from remarkable to fantastic, from fantastic to fabulous, from fabulous to magnificent, from magnificent to majestic, from majestic to splendid, from splendid to spectacular, from spectacular to revolutionary, from revolutionary to victory, and from victory to contentment. That is why in 1949, at the graduation ceremony of the fourth-year graduating students, that guru of Pan-Africanism, Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe, said, and I quote, "Let me plead with you, lovers of my Africa, to carry with you into the world the vision of a new Africa, an Africa reborn, an Africa rejuvenated, an Africa recreated, young Africa. We are the first glimmers of a new dawn." Welcome, and I thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof.
Yes, another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so up next we've got an item which is going to be rendered. We've dispensed some items throughout the program. So you will then see some entertainment there, and then we're also going to see some very prominent people come on stage and motivate you and pretty much inspire you as well through their stories. And up next we have someone who is pretty inspirational, but I will not tell you who. I will keep the suspense right there. Just stay there. Up next we've got the Congolese Student Association. They're going to be performing for us. If you can move your hips while they're dancing, feel free, stand up, join them as they dance for you. So VUT, please give them a round of applause. They are Congolese Student Association.
Yeah,
Wow, they left such a vibe on stage. I feel like I could do it too. But we're not gifted with such talent, yabo? Do you hardly have to be from Congolese to be able to move like that? Or can you guys do it? Really? My DJ, can I ask you to play that one more time and somebody come and prove it to me? One person to come and prove that you can move just as good, if not better. Huh. I heard so much yeses here. Now where are my yeses? My yeses have turned to shaking their heads and no. I heard a female voice say yes, and I will not point it out anywhere. Okay, I'm gonna ask this question one more time. Do you think you can dance better than? Not me. Where are my yeses? All right, okay. I'm gonna ask you again, and it's gonna be very tricky this time. And when I point you out, you're gonna dance. Alright, so yes, VUT, we are still of course celebrating Africa Day together right here at Desmond Tutu Great Hall. I hope you guys are enjoying yourselves because you're about to enjoy yourself even further. Now, to introduce Dr. Monene Mwaniki. I hope I pronounced it right. I did. Thank you very much. I did that. I had to practice. So yeah, Dr. Monene Mwaniki. I am going to welcome a phenomenal poet to come on stage and do his thing and recite and welcome Dr. Monene Mwaniki. Please give him a round of applause. He goes by the name Bathandwa, otherwise known as Imbongi Yakwantu.
Africa! My papa, Africa! My mother, Africa! Good Garden City! Madonna Montana! Kamumpana Gazata! Nimampana Gazata! Kakumana Africa! Kalani Pumili Kwasi! Pasco Africa! Kumbani Lukanya! Pasco Africa! Good Garden City! Kokaniza Africa! Kantiwani Sinchamo! Nisanga Santane! Nitatitesane! Nimuzani Marababini! Kubi Africa! Nilizolama Mpako! Kubi Africa! Nikaratu! Kubi Africa! Kuna paswa Salakona! Kuba hapa kwenye Africa! Kuna paswa Kungapana! Timame Suntamata! Kungaman City! Maimumpani Africa! Maimumpani! Imaipumpamanyama! Kungaman City! Mapelu Kutongana! Gaskonosa Meso! Timapina Mosambika City! Unitate Avosa! Tabaka Wala Nigeria! City! Impapa Agabera! Tabaka Mesutima City! Gopano Kimata! Tabaka Mesona City! This is the Imatipa! Atekila Makosa! Idros Kolu City! Umanyano Kamansa! Kungaba City! Chikwambu! Katekisa Africa! Chico! Sigalani Africa! Kungaba City! Africa rebirth! Africa rejuvenated! Kungaba City! Masman Panegazanta! Chipagani Stars of Africa! Ekale City! Dipanaman City! Kaniwe! Disneyland! Kibunano! Kungaba City! Maimuyi Africa Manane! Kosi Sigalani Africa! Chikwambu Katekisa Africa! Mutime Fututasa Africa! God bless Africa!
I told you he's phenomenal. Give him another round of applause. I want today, Otla, your arms and your hands must be tired from all this clapping because it's about to get fiery on stage. It's about to be L-I-T-T-T, if you know what that means. So, VUT, I'm about to introduce from the University of the Free State, he's going to do his keynote address. But before I welcome him on stage, I'm going to give you a short bio of who he is, all right? So he's born in Mbere Country in Embu County in East Kenya in April 1973. Is it okay if I say that? All right, so Dr. Monene Mwaniki is Kenyan and South African educated. He holds a Bachelor of Education in English and Literature in English, which he obtained in 1995. How many of us were born then? Ah, okay, all right. Well, while you were taking your first breath. Look at what people were doing in life. And an MPhil in linguistics in 1999 from Moi University, that's in Kenya. A master's in public administration, that's an MPA in 2004, and a PhD in linguistics back in 2005 from the University of the Free State, right here in South Africa, Bloemfontein. He taught English and linguistics in Moi University in Kenya from 2005 till 2006 and was the founding deputy coordinator of Moi University's Central Kenya campus. Yes, he did consultancy for the European Union and South African government in the area of language management from 2008 till 2009. And throughout the years, he has achieved a whole lot more. Between 2016 and 2018, he is serving as an external examiner for BEDU-754, Language in Education Policy in the BED Honors Program of the Language Education Department of the Faculty of Education at the University of Western Cape, that's UWC, that's in Cape Town. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome him on stage. Give him a round of applause. He is from the University of Free State, Dr. Monene Mwaniki.
Good morning, everybody. How are you? Thanks so much for the kind introduction.
It's a pleasure.
At least you know my bona fides. I'm a Kenyan South African. But I also know from the Freedom Charter and the Constitution that South Africa belongs to who live in it. So I consider myself a South African because I wake up in this great country every day. Now, with your permission, what I'm going to do is that I will read some prepared remarks, and I've got to give it to Mr. George Mbalo for giving me such a difficult topic to address, because today I'll be talking about the convergence of social justice and African languages within public universities, within the context of South Africa and Africa in general. Now, as I'm saying, I've prepared some remarks, so you just be patient with me as I take you through this, but I'll try to keep within time. I begin by observing that as an African, I have a weakness for telling stories because I was brought up and weaned on stories. And there'll be no better occasion to revisit this age-old African rite than an occasion marking Africa Day. In the days of my youth, as you heard from the introduction, maybe I just look young, but I'm not that young. In the days of my youth, on occasion, we would converge by the evening fire outside our grandfather's cattle kraal for the captivating stories that invariably had the ogre and the beautiful damsel, the hare and the hyena, the bully and the weakling, the arrogant and the kind, and the princess and the commoner as protagonists. And how I miss those days long gone by. Now, my generation, unlike a couple of generations before it, grew up at a time when mass media had become the norm across the continent. Effectively, the transistor radio, and later the black and white TV and the novel were our source of stories. Now, some of the most captivating stories that I grew up with, transmitted through the transistor radio, the black and white TV and the novels I've just mentioned, were from this tip of the African continent. Inasmuch as these stories always had a tinge of the gross human violations and other crimes against man that were committed on this part of the continent, always, without exception. The main leitmotifs of these stories were hope, resistance, valor, and triumph of an indomitable human spirit against all odds. Now, the story of the Women's March of 9 August 1956 is still vivid in my mind. The story of the Sharpeville massacre of 21st March 1960 plays like a horror movie in my mind. The Rivonia trial between 9 October 1963 and 12 June 1964 plays like a comedy of errors in my mind. The Soweto uprisings of 16 June 1976 fill my heart with pride, awe, and sadness. The Rubicon speech of 15 August 1985 still rings in my ears for its hollowness and the sense of forced bravado. The speech of F.W. de Klerk on 2nd February 1990 still confounds me for its cunningness and coincidental timing that seemingly stole the pace of historical constellation that was fermenting on this very tip of the continent. Now, the story of the release of Nelson Mandela from prison on 11 February 1990 is an epic story as they possibly can get. What about the Codesa negotiations and all the intrigues that seemed like being on the front seat in a theater where an epic drama of tragic twists and turns, including the Bishop massacre and the assassination of Chris Haniwa playing out in slow motion. Yet despite all this great land survived all these as the world watched. And what about the first democratic elections on 27th April 1994? And what about the signing of the Constitution on 10th December 1986 at Sharpeville? Now, I'm told Sharpeville is just a few kilometers from here. Now, what is my point? When I think about South Africa, our current challenges notwithstanding, something in me stirs and I want to tell a story. But there's more that led me to open my talk today with enumerating the epoch events in recent South African history. All the events that I've outlined have the subtext of social justice, which is at the heart of our conversation today. And for those not in the know, social justice happens to be a core constitutional value embedded right in the preamble of the Constitution, where the Constitution proclaims, we, the people of South Africa, recognize the injustices of the past, honor those who suffered for justice and freedom in our land, respect those who worked to build and develop our country, and believe that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, united in our diversity. We therefore, through our freely elected representatives, adopt this Constitution as the supreme law of the Republic so as to heal the divisions of the past and establish a society based on democratic values, social justice, and fundamental human rights. Now, I need to mention another side here. South Africa is a constitutional democracy. Effectively, everything that we discuss on here, especially the possibilities of entrenching social justice through African languages in public universities, must be in line with constitutional precepts. I return to this issue briefly in my concluding remarks. However, before telling my story for the day, let me begin with matters protocol. A sincere word of thank you to Mr. George Mvalo, the Director of Social Justice and Transformation, for inviting me, and to personnel in the Office of Social Justice and Transformation for meticulously putting together logistics for my visit. Ms. Ellen Meyer deserves special mention, as well as Mr. Mofokeng. It is a great honor to join you here today on celebrations marking Africa Day. Further, it's a great honor to have been asked to be here today to speak about three issues that are very close to my conscience and which largely shape my research and civic life as a public intellectual. These are social justice, African languages, and public universities. Now, as a way of contextualizing our conversation today, and in effect framing my story, allow me the rare privilege and honor to briefly outline my understanding of and perspectives on these three before attempting a synthesis as a way of convergence. Now, let's begin by talking about social justice. Now, the concept of social justice has preoccupied social theorists for centuries. However, the term social justice was first used in 1840 by a Sicilian priest, Luigi Taparelli Diazegelio, and given exposure by Antonio Rosmini Sebarti in 1948. Now, subsequently, John Stuart Mill, who lived between 1806 And 1873 gives this anthropomorphic approach to social justice an almost omnipotent status in its book, Utilitarianism, Liberty, and Representative Government. Now, at the end of the 19th century, the term social justice was used by social reformers as an appeal to the ruling classes to attend to the needs of the neo-masses of uprooted peasants who had become urban workers or had been dispossessed. The same kind of clarion call goes out every time to this day when it is that we talk about matters of social justice. Now, the meaning of social justice may vary according to different definitions, perspectives, and social theories. However, most conceptions of social justice refer to an egalitarian society that is based on the principles of equality and solidarity, that understands and values human rights and recognizes the dignity of every human being. In this sense, it reflects the three values and symbols of the French Revolution between 1789 and 1799. That is liberty, equality, and fraternity. Globally, the most frequently quoted expression of the founding principles of social justice is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which was endorsed by the international community in 1948. On this basis, a social justice-oriented government or institution, if it is to reflect its ideology of egalitarianism and move beyond the level of policy rhetoric, has to ensure more equitable and fair access to resources and socially valued commodities. One of the key factors in achieving social justice, however, is the emergence of a consensus that society is working in a fair way, where individuals are allowed as much freedom as possible given the role they have within the society in question. Now, hence, true social justice is attained only through the harmonious cooperative effort of citizens who, in their own self-interest, accept the current norms of morality as the price of membership in the community. In recent years, the concept of social justice has been associated with the moral and political philosopher John Rawls. Now, Rawls draws on the utilitarian principle of Bentham and Mill and the social contract ideas of John Locke and the categorical imperative of Immanuel Kant. Now, a synthesis of these philosophical traditions leads Rawls to propose a conceptualization of social justice that holds that each person possesses an inviolability founded on justice that even the welfare of society as a whole cannot override. I think I need to repeat this. Rawls proposes a conceptualization of social justice that holds that every person possesses an inviolability founded on justice that even the welfare of society as a whole cannot override. For this reason, justice denies that the laws of freedom for some might be right for a greater good shared by others. Scholars have further identified two major dimensions on an expanded conceptualization of social justice, and this is what we refer to as the distributional and the relational dimensions. Now, distributional justice refers to the principles by which goods are distributed in society. This is the dimension that is commonly thought of as synonymous with social justice. A society perceived to be just clearly cannot exist without a fair distribution of resources, both material and non-material. However, social justice cannot exclusively be about distribution alone, because doing so severely limits the conceptualization of social justice. Now, this brings in the second dimension to social justice, which is what we refer to as the relational dimension. And the relational dimension seeks to further expand the conceptualization of social justice. The relational dimension refers to the nature of relationships which structure society. A focus on this second dimension helps in theorizing about issues of power and how people treat each other, both in the sense of micro face-to-face interactions and in the sense of macro social and economic relations, which are mediated by institutions such as the state and the market. One way of distinguishing between the distribution and relational dimension is by thinking of them as rooted within two constructing ontological perspectives or philosophical perspectives. The distributional dimension is essentially individualistic and atomistic, that is based on the individual. in that it refers to how goods are distributed to individuals in society. By contrast, the relational dimension is holistic and non-atomistic or collective human being essentially concerned with the nature of interconnections between individuals in society rather than how much an individual gets. Now, according to a scholar called Jackson, writing in 2005, the concept of social justice can be distinguished on two main grounds. First, justice is conceptualized as a virtue that applies to society. And second, social justice as a substantive political content. It recommends the elevation of poverty, and I think this is important. It recommends the elevation of poverty and the diminution of inequality, or at least certain dimensions of it, or the reduction of inequality in society. Various principles of justice may be invoked in order to defend this commitment. Appeals to the ideas of need, equality, a right to a decent minimum wage, and I think this sounds familiar, equal opportunity, and many others cannot be made under this broad heading of identifying the economic unfairness generated by unregulated market forces and recommending state action to ameliorate or remove it altogether. Now, I want to wind up my talk, or rather my take on social justice, by saying that according to the United Nations, there are 6 important areas of inequality in the distribution of goods, opportunities, and rights that need to be corrected so as to engender a culture of social justice. And these are inequalities in the distribution of income, inequalities in the distribution of assets, inequalities in the distribution of opportunities for work and remunerated employment, inequalities in the distribution of access to knowledge, inequalities in the distribution of health services, social security, and the provision of safe environment, and finally, inequalities in the distribution of opportunities for civic and political participation. I think with that I've been able to create a broad framework by means of which you can be able to understand the entire concept of social justice. The entire Feast Must Fall campaign of between 2015 and 2016 can be seen within the lens of social justice, whereby we talk about inequalities in the distribution of access to knowledge, inequalities in the distribution of opportunities for work and remunerated employment, because I think students in this country understood in an extremely intimate way the relationship between a university education and access to the formal employment market. Now, having talked about social justice, let me talk about African languages. Now, because remember, our talk today is about social justice, African languages, and public universities. Now, I will frame my comments about African languages through 3 observations. The first one is what I refer to the Africanist perspective to research, scholarship, and public endeavor. The second one is what I refer to as the Eurocentric approach to research, scholarship, and public endeavor. And the third one is the material fact that Afrikaans and South African English are indeed African languages. Now, let me begin by talking about an Africanist perspective to research, scholarship, and public endeavor. And as I do that, I want to declare, and I think I've done that so far, that I'm an Africanist. And an Africanist perspective to research, scholarship, and public endeavor is a standpoint that, while being fully critical of the best of academic traditions, is better anchored locally in ways that are organic to the domestic priorities of African countries and African communities. Through this orientation, it permits the full engagement of endogenous or locally generated knowledge systems, and it is disciplined to the aspirations of the social players that are the bearers of change. And who are these? These are Africans. Now, I need to mention that one of the ways in which we can be able to apply this perspective when it comes to, to talking about African languages, that were this perspective employed to African languages in public universities in South Africa specifically, the resultant discourse and attended programs will and would be radically different. What I mean by that is that were we to adopt an Africanist standpoint to the entire discourse about African languages in public universities in South Africa, we'll not be having the kind of current situation whereby African languages are mainly reduced to symbolic and ceremonial purposes within our universities. I'll be getting to that in a short while. Let me mention, or in passing, talk about the Eurocentric approach to research, scholarship, and public endeavor. And as I do that, I need to mention that this is one of the biggest challenges that we face as Africans. It is one of the biggest challenges that we face as people who live in what is called the Global South. Now, what is the Eurocentric approach to research, scholarship, and public endeavor? This is a belief in the notion that European civilization, or the West, has had some unique historical advantage, some special quality of race or culture or environment or mind or spirit, which gives this human community a permanent superiority over all other communities at all times in history and down to the present. Europeans are seen as the makers of history. Europe eternally advances, progresses, and modernizes. The rest of the world advances more sluggishly or stagnates. It is traditional society. Therefore, the world has a permanent geographical center and a permanent periphery, an inside and an outside, and the inside leads and the outside lags. The inside innovates and the outside imitates. This belief is what is referred to as Eurocentric diversionism. Now, I won't belabor that point so much. I want to move on and make a point that this is a perspective to African languages in public universities in Africa generally, and in South Africa specifically, that has ensured that African languages do not occupy their rightful place in knowledge production and consumption dynamics. Now, as I wind up talking about African languages, I think it is important to talk about Afrikaans and South African English as African languages. And I do this by first of all posing a question. Aren't Afrikaans and South African English African languages? The linguist in me tells me that they are. Now, without discounting the horrors of our history, what do we need to do, or what am I trying to get to? What I'm alluding to is that we need to shift to an ecology of languages perspective, whereby all the languages in South Africa, which in my understanding can largely be characterized as African languages, and this is without diminishing the kind of disadvantaged status that African indigenous languages have suffered for almost 3 centuries in this part of the world. I think we need to adopt what I'm referring to as an ecology of languages perspective, because each and every language comes encoded with certain kind of knowledges, and we need all these kind of knowledges to be able to formulate what is best for our country and for our continent. Now, having talked about African languages, let me talk about the public university as I move towards the convergence of trying to integrate the entire discussion about social justice, African languages, and the public university. Now, from my historical perspective, the modern university is an accolade by and large attributed to the Prussian educational philosopher Wilhelm von Humboldt. Now, that university for almost 600 years had served as little more than training grounds for lawyers, clerics, and professionals. But then in 1810, Wilhelm von Humboldt became the founding father of the University of Berlin and put into practice his ideas, which became the model of other universities in Europe and the United States, and one dare say in much of the so-called developing world, whereby those kind of modern university research becomes a vital complement of teaching, and by emphasizing science, by urging traffic across disciplinary boundaries, and by attempting to make university contribute more directly to the economy and society. Now, more recently, these ideas about the nature and the role of the university were eloquently outlined by Boyer in 1990, and those who could be familiar with the education of the Rising and philosophy, They know the work of Ernest Boyer called Scholarship Reconsidered, Priorities for the Professorate. And again, I'm not going to belabor you around this, but basically what happened is that Boyer moved the university towards what we refer to as the 4 scholarships, which is the scholarship of teaching, the scholarship of research, and the scholarship of application. Now, let me get to the South African situation so that I can be able to move to the core of my presentation today. I think I'm still in good time. Am I? Okay. Now, South African universities, almost without exception, were founded and have operated on a colonial ethos on the one hand, and an ethno-linguistic and racial ethos on the other hand. Students of history and politics will assert, without exception, unless they belong to sections of South African research community that has been complicit in the design and perpetuation of South Africa's long and tragic history of dispossession, that the colonial ethos, as well as ethno-linguistic and racial ethos, as actualized in the territory currently known as the Republic of South Africa, are deeply steeped in the traditions of dislocation and dispossession. Further, conscientious students of politics of language, imbued with progressive traditions of critique of South African history and politics, will assert, again without exception, that at the heart of the colonial, ethno-linguistic and racial ethos that have scarred South Africa for centuries, and which form the foundations of the university in South Africa, have been the tenuous twin ideologies of Eurocentric diffusionism that I mentioned earlier, and their analogous relationship between the nation and the ethno-linguistic identity. Let me say that in very simple terms, is that the university in South Africa was largely created to perpetuate the colonial and apartheid logic. It is only post-democratic transition that you have been trying to grapple and try to figure out how we can be able to configure the university in South Africa to serve the democratic South African project. Now, having said that, allow me now to get to the core of my presentation. Let's talk about the convergences. The convergences between social justice, African languages, and public universities. And I make a note here and say that I want to synthesize the convergences between social justice and African languages within public universities in South Africa through 2 simple statements. Now, the first statement is this: universities in South Africa need to eat humble pie and get their heads from up the clouds and roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty, figuratively speaking, and reorient their teaching, research and community engagement endeavors to engendering a culture of spectacular, uncompromising, and exceptional public service delivery. Let me repeat that, because I think that is fundamental to what it is that we are gathered here today to discuss. Universities in South Africa need to eat humble pie and get their heads from up the clouds and roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty, figuratively speaking, and reorient their teaching, research, and community engagement endeavors in engendering a culture of spectacular, uncompromising, and exceptional public service delivery. Now, I need to make a comment before I get to the second point. The entire concept of the ivory tower as a descriptor of the university is a Eurocentric construct and should be banished from any Africanist discourse on the place and function of a university in the African setting. Now, the second thing that we need to do is that, and I'm posing a question here, after all, aren't these institutions public? We are talking about public universities here. After all, aren't these institutions public by virtue of being funded by the public exchequer? If their teaching, research, and community engagement aren't tailored to a majority of the population that speaks African languages, how can they account for the billions of rand that the same public invests in them, literally, year in, year out? Let me repeat that again. After all, aren't these institutions, that is public universities, public by virtue of being funded by the exchequer? If their research, teaching, and community engagement aren't tailored to a majority of the population that speaks African languages, how can they account for the billions of rand that the same public invests in them literally year in, year out? Now, I know the convergences are not obvious, so let me make the following observation. And to be able to do that, allow me to quote McLennan 2009 to drive my point home. Now, to me, whatever brings together social justice, African languages, and the public university is what I just mentioned here: exceptional, spectacular, and uncompromising service delivery. Now, I want to make a point quoting McLennan 2009 to drive my point home. Now, service delivery. Service delivery is commonly understood to mean the provision of goods and services by government or other organizations to those who need or demand them. However, in South Africa, given apartheid and a history of colonialism, the provision of services by government is linked to the larger task of redistribution, social justice, poverty alleviation, and economic growth. In this way, the delivery process is strongly associated with the capacity to provide social justice. The word social justice keeps on popping up every time we talk about service delivery in the South African context. Now, this perspective resonates with an earlier perspective by Henson and Awosu Opoma, who also said this: in South Africa, the definition of service delivery certainly is more encompassing and includes not only the ability to provide users with services needed or demanded, but also a sense of redress, that the services should raise the standard of living of the majority and confirm their citizenship in the new South Africa. In a society of growing inequality and uneven advances in education and training, service delivery is seen at times, and this happens to be much of the time, as an instrument for leaping over the contradictions and ensuring a social contract with the people. Effectively, good people, in South Africa, the most obvious way of pursuing and engendering social justice is through spectacular, uncompromising, and exceptional public service delivery. Now, what kind of insight does this observation render possible when it comes to exploring the convergences between social justice, African languages, and or within the public university? Two insights come to mind. The first one is the symbolic, and the second one is the material. Now, when you talk about the symbolic, or more appropriately, tokenism, we would relate to what is currently happening in many public universities where African indigenous languages are recognized as official languages in various universities, but their use is largely confined to linguistic landscapes, that is, naming of places and buildings, important as this is, and then also to salutations during ceremonies such as graduations or this occasion, and in public relations exercises such as radio adverts aimed at ramming up applications, which are not free, by the way, and marketing materials such as brochures, flyers, and banners. That is basically the symbolic. Then we can be able to talk about what you may refer to as the material. The material would involve several things, but for now let me mention two. The first one is, and I think this is at the heart of what it is that we are talking about here today, a need to step back. I'll repeat this after I finish. The material would involve several things, but for now let me mention two of them. One, a need to step back and question the core curriculum being offered in public universities with a recognition and appreciation of the fundamental role that African languages and the knowledges encoded in and by them can and must play, in the words of Cross 2004, in correcting inequitable outcomes from current curriculum by precisely restructuring the underlying generative framework, that is the processes that produce them. Such an endeavor would be associated with the construction of the current curriculum, which means dismantling and deconstructing the legacy of the norm of old practices in order to reconstruct and transform the Eurocentric and racist curriculum to reflect the diverse nature of the academic staff and the student population and the people of South Africa and Africa. Such a process would be aimed at redressing disrespect by transforming the underlying cultural valuation structure, by destabilizing existing group identities and differentiation, which we have inherited from our colonial and apartheid past. Such moves would not just raise the self-esteem of members of currently disrespected groups. They would change everyone's sense of self. They would promote solidarity by helping to redress some forms of misrecognition. Such moves represent deep restructuring of relations of recognition, and they destabilize group differentiation, or they blur it altogether. Now, that is one way in which we can be able to do this. The second way, material way, in which we can be able to ensure that we have got an integration of social justice, African languages in public universities, is what we refer to technically as recalculation. Now, what is this? Flowing from the first issue that I talked about, and in recognition of the core constituents that graduates from public universities, and which must serve so as to deliver spectacular, uncompromising and exceptional public service delivery, we need to ensure that all undergraduate degree programs, of necessity and by structure, require mastery of at least one African indigenous language, if not two. Let me repeat that. We are producing graduates who should be able to get out there and serve the people. These people operate in African indigenous languages. So, if you want to produce graduates who can be able to render exceptional, uncompromising public service delivery, then we need to be able to train these people to be able to interact with the constituents that they'll be serving. That's what I'm talking about here, that we need to ensure that all undergraduate degree programs, out of necessity and by structure, require mastery of at least one indigenous African language, if not two. The simple justification for these is tailoring degree programs to the developmental needs of the country and the continent. Now, having made those kind of observations, let me make my concluding remarks. And my concluding remarks, I want to say that we have crossed the Rubicon onto the terrain of advanced language politics in South African higher education. Now, what does this entail? And I want to be slow because I think I've ran the clock very well at my own time. Okay, I'm told I'm playing on the verge, so I want to be very slow on this. It is time for new thinking. It cannot be business as usual. Let me repeat that. It is time for new thinking. It cannot be business as usual. And to be able to bring this point home, allow me to quote. Because we are talking about public universities. Basically, we are talking about government institutions. Now, when government policies fail to solve problems, the typical reaction is to try to fix the policy or to tinker at the edges of the system. And I think that sounds very familiar. Very seldom do leaders or the public question the institutions that have failed, nor do they often ask whether different kind of practices and structures could be more effective, much less look to ways to transform the existing model of government. We want to start asking questions whether we can be able to imagine a different kind of university. It is time to step back and consider fundamental changes in governance and in our institutions. Currently, there's a substantial mismatch between the institutions we rely on, including public universities, and the actual practices that are emerging. Let me repeat that. Currently, there's a substantial mismatch between the institutions we rely on and the actual practices that are emerging. That we continue to train graduates who We do not insist that they must be proficient in African indigenous languages, yet we expect them to go and effect change in communities that essentially frame their worlds in African indigenous languages. Though we give lip service to the importance of expertise in public decision making, it plays a much limited role than we pretend it does. We live in a complex, fragmented, and changing world. But most of our institutions of government, including the public university, operate as if we could count on stability and predictability. Because it is so hard to change institutions, we try to make do with what we have, even though the fit between these and contemporary conditions is extremely poor. Then, having made that kind of comment, then allow me to follow this with another quote. What is needed is collaborative practice. Let me repeat that. What is needed is collaborative practice. Now, in collaborative practice, by contrast, problems are treated as puzzles, as participants work jointly to put pieces together to create a shared picture of the future and a strategy for getting there. It's high time public universities started involving all stakeholders in the formulation of the curriculum and actualization of the curriculum. This open-ended approach is at odds with both bureaucratic norms and the ideal of finding one right policy. We get extremely obsessed within the university of having one right answer to problems. And students are extremely familiar with this. Okay, we are trained to think that there's only one possible answer to certain scenarios. Now, politicians and agency heads, moreover, including public university heads, tend to see collaboratively produced decisions as a threat to their power, and often they preempt them. Let me repeat that. Politicians and agency heads, including heads of public institutions like public universities, tend to see collaboratively produced decisions as a threat to their power, and often what they do is that they preempt them. However, I share the belief that we're in a period where collaborative efforts are gradually transforming traditional institutional structures and norms. In this way, I share the view of Giddens that structure provides norms and constraints on the action of agents, including agents who are students, lecturers, parents, and other stakeholders within public universities, but also that actions of those agents that I just mentioned can change the structure, typically gradually and perhaps invisibly in the short run. But structure is more than the combined action and practices of agents that persist over time and space. Structure and agency interact and they do evolve. And I think part of what we are doing today is to try and see whether we can continue with that kind of evolution. Now, to me, this kind of doing things, which I call collaborative practice, and this way of thinking, which I call collaborative rationality, holds immense promise for ensuring the pursuit of social justice through African languages in our public universities. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests and other dignitaries gathered here today, welcome to the realm of advanced language politics in South African higher education. What we do in this new territory depends on whether we can shove aside our egos and engage in collaborative work that places African languages and the knowledges encoded in these languages at the heart of reimagining university curricula, and whether we have the spine needed in recalculating university programs, especially undergraduate programs, so as to make it a requirement for proficiency in at least one African language as a prerequisite to qualification, all with the aim of ensuring that African languages play their rightful place in endangering a culture of social justice through spectacular, uncompromising, and exceptional public service delivery. Ladies and gentlemen, the debate is open, and I thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Doctor. I hope you guys learned as much as I did from his address, from his keynote address. Did you? Were you writing notes down? Were you recording at least? You are well appreciated, as well as your address, Dr. Monene Mwaniki. I think I took from that your emphasis on African unity and just so much on unicentric approach to education. I truly took so much. And I think, my personal opinion, I think the greatest leaders have yet to be discovered. If they think, I think the greatest leaders in the world, in fact, have yet to be discovered right here in our continent, Africa. But we will not, of course, be able to discover them unless we unite and we just ignore all these other things that keep us so separated. I mean, we are separated by borders, we're separated by rivers. I mean, those are just the physical aspects of it. And aside from that, there are so many things that separate us. But if we just come together through dialect and African language communication or something, I promise you we can find those great leaders. So thank you very much, Doctor. Give him a round of applause.
Okay. I've got a host of prizes for a number of people.
Hello.
The first prize will go to the person, not now, later on. The first prize will go to the person that will tell us the number of countries that we have in Africa. Please don't Google right now. You should know them before now. Then there will also be a prize for somebody that will tell us the capital cities of all those countries.
How much time do we have?
Then there is another prize for somebody that will tell us the presidents of all these countries in Africa.
No.
You really want to know what one of those prizes are? Are you sure?
Yes.
Irregular supply of magwenya for the whole week. Is that not wonderful?
That's great,
And
yes.
you won't stand on any queue. It will be delivered to you for the whole week. I think you've got a couple of prizes as well.
Yes, I do. And I think I'm going to give away the prizes much easier than you are.
Okay.
Yours are very difficult. I have a couple of prizes that I'm going to give to two people. We're going to randomly select their names. I don't know if you guys have entered the competition, those who are dressed in their African attire. You just drop a name in a little jar. So we're going to randomly select a name from there, and then voila, you get a gift. Not as difficult as...
And please,
Terrence's,
if you wrote your name, don't leave, because when they pick out that name and you are not here, we will have to replace you with someone else.
Skipper Jini Batu does not work, guys. It's not tradition. Okay. Skipper Jini Batu. So yes, we're going to continue with the program. Up next, we've got Buhle Bukazulu. I hope I pronounced that properly. Did I? Was it right? Yes, Buhle Bukazulu. If you know how phenomenal they are on stage, please give them a round of applause. That's very, very, very
Yeah.
KwaZulu.
If you enjoyed what you saw, please give them a round of applause.
I definitely did. I'm sure you did as well.
Okay. We haven't ended yet. There is still more to come. So, keep your expectations high. We are going to move to the next item on the program. We are going to get reflections from our panelists. And we will begin with Ms. Phoebe. Before she comes, I will tell you briefly who she is. Ms. Phoebe Podgieter Gubule served as the Deputy Chief of Staff of the African Union Commission, based at the African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, until March 2017. She was appointed to this position in May 2015 after serving as advisor for strategy and planning to the African Union Commission Chairperson, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, since 2012. Prior to joining the African Union, Ms. Phoebe was the South African ambassador and head of mission to Warsaw, Poland. Ms. Phoebe currently is a member of the board of the Mapungubwe Institute for Strategic Reflections and of the African City Alliance think tank. She previously served as chairperson of the board of the Lijoel Leputswa Development Agency from 2009 to 2013, as deputy chairperson of the State Information Technology Agency 2010 to 2013, a member of council of the Mangosuthu University of Technology 2012-2014, advisory board of the University of Vet Education Policy Unit 2011 to 2013, and the board of Education and Training Unit 2002 to 2012. Ms. Phoebe has a long history in youth development and employment, having served on the National Youth Development Forum and as first female Secretary General of the ANC Youth League during the early 90s. Phoebe has a master's degree from the University of Vet with her research on youth unemployment and labor market policy and institutions. It is in these areas that she has undertaken work for the Gauteng provincial government. The Umsobombu areas that she has undertaken work. The Umsobombu Youth Fund, the HSRC, and the National Youth Development Agency, amongst others. She worked as NEC coordinator at the ANC headquarters from 1998 to 2004. On the editorial board of the journal Umrambulo, and served as a member of the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress between 2007 and 2012. Phoebe served as a member of Higher Education Restructuring Reference Group 2003 to 2004, appointed by the Minister of Education, Prof. Asmal, in May 2003. She chaired the Department of Higher Education's Committee and Adult Education Tax Team, 2011 to 2012, which produced the report on community colleges. Ms. Phoebe was born in Humansdorp, Eastern Cape, where she completed high school. She lives in Paris, in Free State.
Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Ms. Phoebe Podgieter Gubule.
Thank you very much for that introduction, and program directors, the representatives of the Vaal University of Technologies, the honorable speakers and fellow panelists, students, workers, representatives of faculties, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor for me to participate in the EDSU-Africa Day celebrations as part of celebrations by millions of Africans across the continent. Africa Day celebrates the formation of the Organization of African Unity on 25 May 1963, when the founders of the then 33 independent states came together around a continental mission and common destiny and a determination to assist other countries like South Africa who were still under the yoke of colonialism and apartheid. Over the years, and especially after the end of apartheid in Namibia and South Africa by 1994, the day is also used to reflect on the key challenges facing us today and to look towards the future. The theme of the 2017 celebrations, which our keynote speaker has so eloquently addressed, convergence of social justice and African languages within public universities, is critical to the ongoing process of African development and indeed to the African Renaissance. In 2013, the continent celebrated 50 years since the founding of the OAU and the African Union, and agreed to develop a framework for the next 50 years towards the implementation of the AU vision of an Africa that is integrated, an Africa that is peaceful, an Africa that is prosperous and people-centered and that plays a dynamic role in the world. This framework, which eventually became known as Agenda 2063, elaborates the aspirations of the Africa we want. Amongst the 7 aspirations which were elaborated by different sectors of civil society, governments, of Agenda 2063 is Aspiration 5, which says that we want an Africa with a strong cultural identity, common heritage, shared values, as well as ethics. Now, in pursuance of this aspiration, Agenda 2063 highlights the following things that we need to do to ensure that we have an Africa with a strong cultural identity, common heritage, shared values, and ethics. The first one is that we must use the diversity of our languages as a cause of strength and that it should not divide us. Secondly, that we need to enhance our Pan-African cultural assets, be that heritage, folklore, languages, film, music, theatre, literature, festivals, religion, as well as our common and separate and different spirituality. And thirdly, that African languages shall be the basis for administration and integration. And these are the tasks that face us as we debate this very important theme in 2017. Now, all of these aspirations takes place in a historical as well as a contemporary context. And the African continent is regarded as one of the most linguistically diverse continents in the world, with an estimated, and this was in 1996, of over 2,000 languages across the length and breadth of the continent. At the same time, despite this linguistic diversity, many linguists, including UNESCO, warn of a process that is leading to the mass extinction of languages across the world, including in the African continent. The trend in Africa is of particular interest, with a paper that was done on the Index of Linguistic Diversity by Harman and Lowe in 2010, noting that there seems to be a trend in the continent where between the 1970s and 1985, there was a process of more equal distribution of African indigenous languages in terms of speakers were observed. And after the mid-80s, we see a counter trend with a decline of many languages share of spoken within the populations. Now, what this means is that there was a period culminating in the mid-1980s, post-independence, a focus on mother tongue instruction, on the development of African languages, where across nation-state, more people spoke more of our indigenous language. And then a counter trend in the post-mid-80s, where dominant language, a few dominant languages dominated, and fewer languages being spoken by more people. This latter trend is perhaps not surprising when we consider the list of official languages of African countries today, that there are in fact more than a dozen countries that have their former colonial languages as the official language, that nearly all of our I shouldn't spill the beans on what the answer to the question is, but all of our countries have one of the colonial languages as amongst our official languages, either French, English, or Portuguese. And that in fact there are very few languages, African languages, where there's attempts being made to learn languages in the same regions, and maybe Kiswahili in East Africa is an exception, and some of the common languages in West Africa. But besides that, what we have in common is our former colonial languages. When we therefore discuss issues of languages in the continent, and in the context of this aspiration of Agenda 2063, there are a number of themes which emerge in the discussion on the development of African languages in the decades of independence, influenced by history. And when we talk about history, we're talking about both our pre-colonial history as well as the colonial history and the decisions and policies that we took post-colonialism. And let me focus on some of them. And of course, in the context of the pre-colonial development of languages, the diversity, given the vast space within the African continent, accounts for the fact that we have so many different languages, 33,000 square kilometers, and it's often said that in the African space we can fit China, we can fit the United States of America, we can fit Western Europe, we can fit Japan, and then we also have still space for a couple of islands. So it's not surprisingly, given this vastness of the continent, the large amount of languages that have developed. But in addition to that, our languages has also been influenced about trade amongst ancient African communities, pastoral communities, and trade with the rest of the world, as well as internal migration within the continent over the centuries, and the rise and fall of ancient African kingdoms. That all of this have impact on our languages as they develop in the pre-colonial period. The impact of colonial include the range of anthropological studies of African languages, the languages of conquest and foreign rule to ensure that the dominated understand the instruction and the rules of the colonizer, cultural assimilation under the theme of civilizing the natives, as well as the impact of missionary schools and education systems on our languages. And if one look at apart from the things mentioned by previous speakers, that today in continuation of the promotion of these languages of the past through historical associations such as the Association of La Francophonie, the Commonwealth, the Lusophone Association, that these all play a role in the continuation and the promotion of these languages within the continent. And then of course the third development is the post-independent language issues, which South Africa in its 23 years of democracy also had to contend with. And those include issues of nation building in the context of the artificial colonial borders, where language groups, where national groups were divided through artificial borders, and some of the different approaches that emerge as we seek to build nations around these diversities that we found in the post-colonial times. From the one extreme of for the nation to live, the tribe must die, and therefore the need to establish a common national language and underplay the different other languages, to the cases in some parts of our continent where there's a focus on ethnic federalism, where languages are being promoted through universities, through administrations in the form of a federal system, to the case of the development of Kiswahili. So within the nation-building project across the continent, language has played an important role. There's also been the decisions that I referred to earlier about official languages, as well as the languages of administration, the debates about language and mother tongue instructions in school, going back to the Pan-African Conference in 1974 in Nairobi with teachers on this matter, where the necessity of mother tongue instruction was put forward, as well as the role of university in the study and development of African languages. And in 2012, one of the UCT professors and linguists professors made the point that what he called the absurdity that African language studies are dominated by scholars from outside of the continent rather than the opposite. And that in fact he noted that there are more German universities teaching African languages than, for example, in South Africa. And this is something that universities we need to take in consideration. Then it also includes continental efforts such as the AU Center for African Center for Language, the development of African languages called Akalan, With its focus on development of African languages, they offer a master's program in African languages in linguistics, as well as projects such as the development of an African linguistics map to map out what's happening with our languages, as well, and the promotion of translation services. And then, of course, there's African languages in the creative sector, in literature, in theatre, in film, in music, including in comedy. And the counter trends that's happening there, where you have in music, where we mainly perform in our own languages, and then the opposite in literature, we tend to mainly produce in the languages of our former colonial masters. And the contradiction that this presents. And then, of course, the fourth is the global trends. The doctor from University of Free State referred to the influence of mass media. But in today's world, the role of language in cyberspace, that at the start of the internet, for example, English accounted for 80% of the content on the web. Over the last decade later, there's about 10 languages that accounts for 82% of that, and there's not a single African language that's part of those 10 top languages. And therefore, as we engage with the rest of the world, and we're talking about globalization, we should also look at how do we use and promote our languages to engage with the rest of the world. Some of the lessons for South Africa from this history from across the continent are relevant to South Africa in terms of, as a young democracy, 23 years. From the recent announcement in a budget speech by the Minister of Basic Education that talked about progress with a project to introduce African language instructions in at least 50% of schools in the near future, to the student movement's demand for language policies as part of the process of decolonization, and the bold step taken by the University of KwaZulu-Natal to make Zulu compulsory for all first-year students, and more universities should follow that trend, towards the issues around investments in languages besides Afrikaans and English, and the debate about multilingualism. The Vaal University of Technology Africa Day concept paper correctly identified the historical evolution of the situation we find ourselves in today at universities, the disappearance of African language departments in the face of cuts in funding, and which then have knock-on effects in terms of the teaching of African language, the writing of African languages and literature, as well as the study and development of our linguistics and thus multilingualism. We have to therefore, as a university sector, and particularly a public university sector, as well as individual institutions, look at how we redress the situation and take those first steps, whatever they are. As we therefore celebrate Africa Day in 2017, the issues of language as set in Agenda 2063 is critical to the vision of an African Renaissance. It's specific to South Africa, but it's an ongoing African and continental issues. For example, the official languages of the African Union are English, French, Arabic, and Portuguese. And some of the working languages that we use at Summit include Kiswahili as well as Spanish. And the question that we should ask ourselves, are these indeed our languages of integration, our languages of prosperity, our languages of peace, our languages of our public service, as the founders and the early Pan-Africanists envisaged in 1963? Let me conclude with a quote from the Akalan director from 2004, when he said, and I quote, "If you want to change the world, your mother tongue is the tool, because language is embedded in the way you think, the way you see the world, express your feelings and vision, and interact with others. No community can develop without the use of the mother tongue, especially in the science and technology," end of quote. This is of particular relevance since we are here today at the University of Technology with its focus on science and technology, and I look forward to your views on this matter. I wish you a reflective and inspiring Africa Day. Ngiyabonga, asante sane, shukram, baie dankie, and kosi, and as they say in Ethiopia, amesekenar.
Merci beaucoup, Maman, pour ce que vous avez fait pour l'Afrique. Thank you very much for the wonderful job you've done for our continent. At times we just enjoy the products, But we don't know who spends a sleepless night to make sure that things go smoothly. Thank you very much.
A round of applause. Very good, very good. Right, up next we're going to introduce a PR student from right here at the Vaal University of Technology. He is a trained student advisor in disciplinary hearings. He is the 2014-2015 SCO Public Relations Officer. Well accomplished. He's an Economic Freedom Fighter Student Command member. Ladies and gentlemen, please do put your hands together for the Student Representative Council right here at the Vaal University of Technology, Mr. Lemogang Medupi.
Thank you very much. Like introduced, my name is Lemogang Medupi, and I'm the member of the interim SRC, serving as the chairperson of the Faculty of Engineering. And let me firstly greet Mama Dumela, Tata Ardumele, the guest speaker, Tibela Ndademfa Valo, Ardumele, Gadumedis. To all the students and the staff members, everyone, please receive my greetings. Samina Hari. From here, I will be attending a disciplinary hearing for students. And this is, before I forget, please, my fellow students, let's avoid that. Let's avoid cheating. Let's avoid breaking examinations rules, please, because it's putting us at an awkward position where you must defend the student, at the same time you must defend the policies of the school. So if you do not understand, ask help, consult with the lecturers, and if you feel like you're not prepared, rather not go than to go there and compromise your career. Do we understand each other? Thank you very much. Yeah, I want to reflect on what Professor Gordon Zide said, and on what the guest speaker has said, and the beautiful lady who just left the podium now. You know, Professor Gordon Zide indicated that in his time of being a student, they used to doi. And the question I have is that right now, he is on the other side. And when we are propelled to doi, you know, we don't just decide to doi. Conditions forces us to doi. At the moment you just raise one leg, you are out. There are students who are expelled, who are still trying to negotiate that they come back. There are students who are suspended, and it is very difficult. And they got a chance to do that. And right now we are in a democratic, after apartheid. But still the system is still the same, it hasn't changed, and student activism is getting killed each and every day. We had an instance where there is a comrade who is a communist. And when he got to government, some of us were happy before that at least we have a communist leader there in government, and therefore the language will be of communism, we're going to get free education, and so forth and so forth. But then when it gets to the other side, the tone changed. He was even laughing at students and saying students must fall. And this is the generation that I want to say, we are a generation that is faced with a very huge battle to deal with. Because you are dealing with the same government, the same black government, and at the same time you are dealing with white supremacy. So our battle is twofolded. You are dealing with a dragon that has two heads. And what we want to see happening is that, can we get our chance? Can we get protection to express ourselves, and so that we can defeat the common enemy that we think it is the enemy, and which is colonization and the system itself, even today in 2017. Now, he mentions, he was quoting himself, and he said, from this to that, from this to that, and towards the end, Professor Zide, he says, from being revolutionary to being victorious. Now, we must all understand that for us to be revolutionary and to end at a victorious stage, there must be force. There must be some sort of resistance and attack of the system. And we must be allowed to resist the system and to attack it accordingly. The guest speaker mentioned something, and I fully concur with you, that the business cannot, it cannot just be business as usual. The conditions are not usual. Therefore, how we approach them, we cannot be usual. We cannot be, you cannot treat a very abnormal situation with a normal approach. An abnormal situation needs an abnormal approach. We uproot it with its roots, and we deal with the core roots of the problems that we have. Just to reflect on the current affairs, when we had Fees Must Fall protests, Roads Must Fall and everything, police were everywhere on campus. Everywhere. Police were all over campus at the residences. You want to go to the toilet, there's a police. You are writing examination, there's a policeman. It was so uncomfortable. Right now, our lives of our sisters are at danger. Where are the police? And now we must march. I heard there's a march. I said I'm not going to form part of that march to SAPS. When we are fighting for peace, we don't march to SAPS to say, come, protect us. And right now, for our lives to be safe, we must go march and say, SAPS, come. No. In fact, if we are going to organize a march, we must exclude the police. They must be out of the picture. When President Zuma was doing the reshuffling, there was an intelligence report all over the place. And right now, people like our sisters are getting abducted and all that. Where is the intelligence report on that? People are being hypocritical. And when we stand up and rise, this time around, we must not back up. I want to tell you the truth. I want to tell you this is how I feel. In the next revolution, whether it's Fees Must Fall or whatsoever, if I get arrested, please don't hashtag my name, bring back Lemohang, do what. No, that is shifting us from the focus. We are no longer fighting for Fees to fall. Right now we are saying police brutality, Lemohang must come back. No. If Mcebo gets arrested, it's fine. When we win, we'll come. But we must continue with the revolution. If I die, forget about me. You will have my memorial service in the streets. But as long as at the end of the day, we attain initially what we fought for, and that is the Fees to Fall. This thing of making people popular, hashtag this one, no. The initial hashtag was Fees to Fall. And the end of it, it must Fees to Fall, and that's it. And comrades, we must interrogate everything, we must question everything. We must be a generation that doesn't just consume things. We must question things and put things into perspective. Let me just come back and talk to students now. Students of Valley University of Technology, please, I want to urge you, I want to challenge you that we get united. Whether you are Tsonga, whether you are Venda, or Umutswana, or Umusoto, let us unite. Let us create a community in the university. A community of black people. A community whereby when I meet you, I greet you, I pass. We must be able to recognize each other. If I don't have food, I must not worry. If your roommate does not have food, your roommate must not worry, because we are a black community. You know, when ke tlhagara Steenberg ko Mogwasi, ko gae ha go sena sukiri, ke tsamaya ka kopi, ke tlola strata ko kopa sukiri, and it's normal. So we must not come here and act as if we have made it in life. we must continue to be united. If I am good in maths, let us assist each other. If I can understand physics or whatsoever, let us be united, let us be one, let us assist one another. And that's the only way we can be able to fight the system and win against it. Now, you know, these days when you greet a lady innocently, hello, and then like, please, let us get rid of that. Ladies, when we greet you, we want to show respect to you. We cannot just hashtag our ladies must be protected and we fail to greet you and protect you on daily basis. Let us just be in order. When a lady greets you, don't try to follow it up and say, probably there are chances. You know, when a lady greets you and you are thinking, no, she's been looking at me. No, let us stop that. Let us be united. Let us protect one another. And at the end of the day, I can guarantee you, we are going to win this battle. The international students, let us blend. Comrades from the Central Africa or the Up Africa, you call it, let us come together. You know, there is this group of international students, they are always working together. There's this group of South Africans, Zulus, and let us blend and come together. When xenophobics attacks, that's when someone will say, no, xenophobia, what? Let us start it now, practicalize it, live it, and be honest to what is confronting us. Now, look, you know, Tsongas, there's something I learned from Tsongas. Tsongas bakomanile, man. And definitely, ingadonza nchumu kwe shokutala kavora. You know, we can learn one or two from these people. Tsonga people, I know it's not allowed. Management, they can take me to DC, it's fine. Tsonga people, I tell you, they come back from Guyana. When they get here, they get only one room. They stay there, all of them. And that is a black, and that's how black people should live. I must not be selfish, and I must not, if I have a loaf of bread, and then it's for me and for me alone. No. We must be able to share. And if we want to be a socialist country, a socialist continent, we must start it from the university. I want to speak something about Africa and the language. You see, when you read the Bible, there are people who are reading the Bible. I stopped reading it for a number of reasons. You know, when the missionaries came, the Bible had translations for all South African languages. Right? And right now we are saying, develop African languages. We want the curriculum to be in our languages. They will tell you it's difficult, it's impossible. And if you can read the Bible has very difficult terms. Mind you, it's coming from Greek and whatsoever. And they were able to translate it to Sotho, to Zulu, to all this language. They must not tell us lies. If they don't want to develop our languages, translate them to the curriculum so that we can be part of it, then we must stop reading the Bible. No. We must be able to meet each other halfway. The Bible is very difficult, translated to all the languages, come to the curriculum, dolol. Right? And if you read Genesis, and when Adam and Garden of Eden, there's something that was that just left us along the way. I want to believe that Garden of Eden was in Africa. And why am I saying this? If you read the first chapters there, they will indicate to you that in the Garden of Eden, there were 4 rivers. And the other river was encompassing Ethiopia. Where is Ethiopia? In Africa. Now we can be able to trace and see exactly if then the Bible is on the right side, then the Garden of Eden started in Africa. Therefore, life started in Africa. There is a river amongst the 4 rivers. The Bible says that river has a good gold. Where do you find most of a mineral called gold in the world? In Africa. And therefore, South Africans, we must reclaim our identity, we must reclaim ourselves, and we must come back, unite. And the AU, there are some things I really don't understand about the AU. I'm still going to get there. When is the AU going to declare out these borders? When is the AU going to come together and say, as Africans, we are going to have one language that is going to unify us, African language? When are they declaring that? Okay, Nkosazana, I don't want to pronounce the same name. The lady, Miss Nkosazana, she was there. We are still questioning when are we getting the land back to South Africans. We are not talking about Africa. We are saying as Africans. The only thing that I think the AU does is to attack African leaders. You know, when President Mugabe says this, 30 seconds, they would want to say, President Mugabe, you are wrong, this and that. And it puzzles me. What I want is that as Africans, let us come together. Let us be united. It's not going to be nice. If it means bloodshed, let us go there. The AU national anthem, it says we must be determined. We must defend our liberty and unity. Let us dedicate ourselves to rise together. Now, dedication means you are taking your soul, your spirit, and everything, your time to protecting our continent. And by so saying, I want to say, Maibuye Africa, Ngosisingeleni Africa, and we want to reject this English part of this day, the South African language national anthem. When you get to that part, everyone, that part of our land, even white people, they all, our land. And us, we cannot say it because we haven't got the land. So we must suspend that part until we get back the land. Amanda!
Thank you very much, Comrade Fighter Lemoham Mejube. Long live the spirit of unity in Africa. Long live peace in Africa. You know, the first day I got into a geography class, I was told that longitudes and latitudes were imaginary lines that run across the earth. So the borders that separate Africa are imaginary. It lives only in the brain. When you take it out of the brain, it doesn't exist anymore. So we have a borderless Africa. So without any waste of time, we'll call on our last panelist, Mr. Neville Felix, who is the head of culture at the Sidibeng District Municipality. But before he comes, I have outnumbered a number of prizes that are to be won. There is the last one. The person that will make the loudest noise in his mother tongue. We will all shout out in our mother tongue, anything, but the person that makes the loudest noise in your mother tongue will get that prize. So, I'll count. Ashley will actually do the countdown from 3 to 1. Then, shout anything, even if you like, you shout your name in your mother tongue. The person that makes the loudest noise will get that prize. So, can you do the countdown?
Are you guys ready? Shout in my mother tongue.
Anything.
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 Can I shout too?
You're allowed. You can maybe say Mamzo, it's fine.
Alright, anything in your mother tongue. Alright, I'm gonna count you guys down. Are you guys ready? Yeah. Ready to win the prize. Do you have the prize with you?
I've got that prize right here with
Alright, let's go. 3 in 3 seconds. I'm gonna count you down. Come on, let's go. 3, 2, 1.
Thank you very much. I have noticed 2 people.
Yeah?
I saw 2 people who made the loudest shout. And I'm bringing
This guy, guys.
I saw you. It is said that water is life. So, you just had the most precious gift of the day, which is water, which is life. So, don't worry.
We all do.
More is coming.
More water or more life?
More bigger prizes and more bigger surprises. So we'll call on Tate Neville.
Yes, make some noise for Mr. Felix.
Good morning, good afternoon, I should say, to our panelists here, to our honored professors, doctors, some of us aspiring, and executive directors, also the incoming Vice Chancellor in absentia, and to you, aspiring academia, I greet you all. I've been requested to come here today just to be actually part of the discussion. And I thought that it wasn't necessary for me to prepare any input or paper, since I'd be part of the panel. But after listening to the panel discussions, starting with the good doctor on linguistic expressions, or academia expressions on linguistic challenges in South Africa and Africa as a whole, and also understanding the nuances that was raised by Ms. Potgieter, one has come to the following conclusion, that I might have to make a small input that moves slightly away from the topic in discussion, but it captures it in essence. So I'll try and summarize from my perspective. I, locally here in Sedibeng District Municipality, have a very, very long portfolio. They call it Shrek and H. And it's not that green guy that you see in the movie Shrek. It means sports, recreation, arts, culture, heritage, which is a very long portfolio. And one of the issues that we've been grappling with in government holistically throughout, I won't give you my resume because it's too long, is the fact that there is no policy papers. This is very simple. There is no policy papers on culture. Can I say that again? When you look through government itself, even with the National Department of Arts and Culture, there is no comprehensive policy document that exists in the 23 years of democracy in South Africa that speaks to culture comprehensively. Now, I want us to take a step back. Some of the issues that was raised by Doctor on linguistic issues is part of the challenges. The other issues of exclusions of different societies in the understanding of what makes up the makeup of the African continent is part of the challenges. The exclusion of marginalized, and I was so excited when I heard the student representative speak here, I was killing myself. I never thought I'd see some comedy being expressed here from this platform. I was excited when he raised issues as well, but leave that alone. The question that I'm raising is why do we not have a proper expression on culture? something I'm leaving with you to think about. It means that we have an undefined discussion. We have an undefined discussion. And that undefined discussion encompasses all of the inputs that was made here today, including the marginalized societies that exist in Africa as a whole. It's quite huge. We heard today that you speak more than 2,000 plus, with the exception of some of the languages that we lost, with the Khoi, with the San and other indigenous groups that existed also in other parts of Africa before it was colonialized. And it's sad that today, in the 21st century, because that's where we are, fast forward from our history to where we are today, in the 21st century, we still don't have a blueprint of our cultural identity. Very sad. And therefore today I just want to leave, I'm not going to speak very long, I just want to shock you. One of the challenges that we face in South Africa, especially to academia, is how do you assist us as society in developing a blueprint of who we are as an African society. In particular, Vaal University of Technology, because we're a melting pot of extreme cultures more than anywhere else in the country. You've got people from every society across the length and breadth of Africa. And therefore, the right place to start in developing the groundwork for such a policy would probably exist at this very same campus. So one of the challenges that I would like to leave with the students as well as the academia here at the university is how do you assist us in government in establishing that blueprint that defines us as African. Because what I find very sad, if one listens to some of the remarks made, including the representative of the students that was here earlier, we classify blackness in abstract of Africans. So that tells me that even if you're born here, regardless of who you are or where you come from, you're still not regarded as an African. You can't count into that discussion because you are identified by virtue of colonial thinking based on color, one, ethnic and origin, two, and lastly, we also need to identify in this discussion, because you see the values that we represent as African people is completely different to the values that is Eurocentric or even American. Our values was not about diamonds and gold. We walked over them every day. Our values was around Ubuntu in the main. And it's time that when we do have this discussion, which I hope will be very soon, that we can put together a discussion of defining who we are as Africans. Not South, West, because that's geographical locations of where we come from. But as Africans, we need to determine who we are. And once we get that right, I think we'll have the blueprint to reinvent who we are as Africans, I think.
Thank you very much, Dr. Neville. Those wonderful, wise words.
Yes. And I come bearing gifts. Finally, true gifts, guys.
Yeah. Remember, I told you that there are a lot of gifts to be won today. Some have been won already. There is more still to come. So I hope by now you've got the names of the number of countries we have in Africa.
For Magwenya, right?
Okay. But I think within here there is another gift. It's there. Okay. Okay. We are not going to touch the names that you wrote and put in there. Somebody will come from somewhere. He will do it randomly. He will select a name. He will take it to someone else to read it. So that, you know, you can just speak. It might be Lerato, but since you are called Lebo, you just say Lebo. So, we will give that honor to Mama to select a name inside. Then we will take it to Tate to tell us who the winner is.
Cross your fingers if you're dressed in your African way. Just hope that it's you who's going to win any one of these prizes. Do you want to know what it is?
Tate, tell us.
It's a full year supply of... I'm kidding, guys. It's not a supply.
Azande Ralepenya.
Who is that?
Who is Azande? Oh. Locking number 1. Mama Africa.
Okay, she is staff. You are an honest being. I would have kept it. But she says she's staff, so she wants us to do another round of the draw, okay?
So she passed on the blessings to someone else.
Lucky number 1, technically.
B. Pony.
B. Pony, whose surname is Pony and has an initial B. Rekopa ID while you edit.
Is there B Pony in the house?
All right.
No. Okay.
Let's try again. Let's try again.
Mama, this time I'm coming to you.
What are they?
Noma Flora. Nana Flora.
She didn't even leave her number. We could have... I guess we're just gonna keep trying. You know what? I think we're gonna keep these. Bye.
Who has got this telephone number?
0
82 343 9224. By the name of
Bongekile Mtali. Yes, Bongekile Mtali. Are you sure? Okay.
Félicitations.
Yay, all right. We're about to give away one more.
Okay. Now we'll come to the fathers to
These are power
help
banks.
us.
Yes, I think. But they're not edible, that's for sure. It's nothing you can eat.
Sir, can you please help us with the name? Tate Mvalo, help us with the winner.
Nancy Milonda.
Nancy Milonda, yeah.
Congratulations, Miss Nancy.
Yeah, we're generous, aren't we? I think we've got more.
There are more prizes to come.
No.
This is just the first phase of prizes. And don't forget the unlimited supply of Magwenya for an entire week. That one too is still to come.
Do you offer gym membership as well with that? Because you know the consequences of that that prize. All right, VUT, we're about to introduce to you the Director of Social Justice and Transformation right here at the Vaal University of Technology. If you want to get in touch, please just raise up your hand. It's going to be a discussion. Please put your hands together for Mr. George Mvalo.
Thank you so much, program directors. Colleagues, we have reached that stage where we have had an opportunity to listen, to a lot of our guest speakers, the panelists who have spoken on a very interesting topic and a theme around the convergence of African languages and social justice within our public universities. Our guest speaker really actually set the scene and the tone as to how best actually we can see the convergence of these seemingly disparate actually concepts of social justice. And he began actually to nicely unpack what social justice is, but also the whole notion of African languages, their context, their location within actually the African context. But most importantly as well, how universities should be playing actually a role in ensuring that not only do these actually important African languages remain as part of our cultures and our identity, but they should try. But also he began also to perhaps raise a concern about how these African languages have also been reduced to symbolic purposes in our universities. And when he was saying that, I was reminded of my own university, where actually at this stage we don't actually have actually Sotho or any African language as an academic language. And it therefore actually behoves all of us, I think, colleagues, that we begin to grapple. When we grapple with this, let's come up with some practical ideas as to how best we can position these languages so that we can reclaim, or these languages can reclaim their position within academic institutions like our public universities. He also actually asked a rhetorical question, whether indeed are these public universities. We're getting money from government, but are we indeed actually public? Because the practice actually seems to be the opposite in terms of how we actually execute a very important constitutional mandate as this country. Talking about the Constitution, I think I just want to quote a few sentences really from our Constitution that begin to say we should perhaps, in recognizing the historically diminished use and status of indigenous languages of our people, the state must take practical and positive measures to elevate the status and advance the use of these languages. I think that actually has been said as far back as 1996. And the question is actually whether, we have really taken practical and positive measures as public universities to elevate the status of our languages and to use these languages, not only for symbolic purposes, but for substantive purposes, where issues of curriculum, of assessment, and ideology perhaps, actually are examined in these particular languages. Colleagues, without any further ado, can we actually, I hope there are actually some comments, inputs, questions that you want to pose to our guest speaker, to the esteemed panel. The floor is yours, but please let us be brief and ensure that actually we allow others actually to ask or to make commentary. Let's restrict that commentary to the issues of the convergence of social justice, African languages, and public universities. Do we have hands? Where's Terence? There's a hand there, here, and there's a hand at the back as well.
Good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much to the panelists for giving us these thought-provoking presentations. first of all, in fact, my questions are are directed particularly to Dr. Mwaniki and Ms. Phoebe Kubuli. In Africa, we have political, social, and economic systems or economies that are characterized by racial, tribal, and religious constructs or connotations. For example, if you go to Zimbabwe, you find these three dimensions or human ecological aspects being dominated by the Shonas. You go to Kenya, you can say the same with the Kikuyus. You go to Cameroon, you have the Franco and the Anglophone communities not really agreeing on the national discourse. You come to South Africa, we had the Afrikaner nationalism. After that came Cosa Nostra. Now you talk about the Zulufication of the state and the government institutions. The same can be said about Nigeria, Christians versus the Islamic communities. Rwanda, again, talk about Hutus and Tutsis. And so is the same about South Sudan, recently. Therefore, my question is, in fact, my questions are, in light of these contradictions or realities, how can universities, therefore, choose a language of instruction that will actually enhance these convergences in order to create what I call a social justice or human and racial coexistence? That's question number one. Question number two, can we blame, now that I think this particularly goes to Ms. Phoebe Kubuli. You talked about the destruction or the elimination of certain languages in Africa. Can we blame, therefore, the post-independent leaders in suppressing other national languages in order for them to entrench their grip on these three human ecological environments that I mentioned above? And I ask these questions based on one issue, that the language is power in any society. Thank you.
Can you perhaps take there was actually another question there?
Sanbonani, I think it's an African day today. I'm allowed to speak my language since it's an African day. Sanbonani. The question is not a question per se, but it's I raise on a point of comment. Why I'm saying it's a comment when I as young as I am, I feel that the generation which sold out per se in 1976. In 1976, when you check, they are the generation who tried to fight Africans to decolonization and everything. But the problem, the mistake that they did was that they fought Africans, but they replaced Africans with another colonization language, which was English. That generation when they were supposed to fight, when we were fighting that thing, I think they were supposed to fight up until at least in South Africa we'll be having a common language as African language. Not that we are fighting Africans, but we are replacing Africans with another colonial language, which is English. And again, when you check that thing, why I'm saying that, if we are using the African language, even those people from East, we are speaking about those ones, Europe and everything, we're not going to penetrate South Africa per se or Africa coming to loot our resources because of we'll be protecting those resources with an African language. If, let's say, now we are coming to Sharpeville, all of them, they're speaking Sesotho, they don't understand English, you can't penetrate that, that territory per se. Thank you.
Any other question or comment? I think there's a hand in the middle there.
My name is Mpo. Well, I have a question relating to the way we move forward. Because one thing I've realized is that as Africans, no matter where you are from, we are all very spiritual beings naturally, in our own different ways. So like, I feel that our religion and our ancient practices and disciplinary systems have been infiltrated by the same colonizers, and the infiltration still stays until today. This has been accomplished through art, whereby your people like Leonardo da Vinci have depicted Christianity as a whole Europeanized version. Some of the images still stand today. So my question and what I would like to understand is, how will we retain the truth about our spiritual power as Africans? Because it is not what it used to be before. There are a lot of lies in our religion. There are a lot of business seekers. There are a lot of oppressors that use religion to oppress people's minds today. So how are we going to get past that, yet still uniting together as Africans?
Any other burning comment or question before we head over to our esteemed panel? Gone.
Can I just, one. I think at this time in South Africa or in Africa in general, women should be leading in asking questions and interacting, especially when there is men around us. I feel like at the moment, we as women have a lot more to say than these gentlemen. Hence, I am here to encourage you ladies to, in fact, get in this discussion as well. Ask questions, be involved in this discussion. So if there is anyone who would like to start off as a lady, ask one question, that's all we need. Your interaction as a female in this discussion. We want to understand what it is that you would like to ask our wonderful panel on stage as a woman in this continent at this time in Africa. I mean, yeah, the guys as well. The guys have raised their questions. They have raised comments as well as statements. Ladies, is there anything you would like to ask? I'm literally putting you on the spot.
Thank you very much. My question is us celebrating Africa Day today, moving in the right direction of radical transformation and of economic transformation? I don't know if I'm clear.
Whilst the panelists actually are getting ready to respond, just to abuse my position here as a facilitator of the discussion, I want to pose a question that was posed by Osina Alido and Ali Mazul as far back in 1999, where they were talking about the language of Africa-centered knowledge in South Africa. They asked this question: Can there be genuine democracy in South Africa when prevailing post-apartheid institutions continue to foster forms of knowledge that continue to produce inequalities which continue to underprivilege the African majority? I think with those, with that question, perhaps, Dr. I think I can see you are ready to come forward. Dr. Waniki, over to you.
Yes, I want to make my response to be rather very brief. Towards the end of my presentation, I talked about collaborative practice. I talked about collaborative rationality. Now, let me expand on that a bit as I try to respond to your question. What I was trying to say is this. We need to model responses to African challenges going by what works out there, because there are things that are working out there. The biggest challenge we have at the present moment is that we have got institutions that are not aligned to everyday practice. That is my first response. The second response is this. I will not agree with you. The kind of picture you have painted about Africa is extremely simplistic. So I don't agree with you at all. If you tell me that property owners in Kenya are Kikuyus, I'll tell you no. I'm a property owner, I'm not Kikuyu. So what I'm trying to say is this, reality is more complex. And often at times we fall into this kind of temptation of providing complex situations with extremely simplistic explanations. We need to avoid that. And that's why I'm saying we need to model what works on the basis of what is actually working out there. Why would we want to have one African language if we can have 2,000 of them? Seriously, why would we want to have one African language if we can be able to have 50 of them? Why would you want to have one African language if we can be able to develop and be able to access indigenous knowledge systems in 2,000 languages? Why would you want to do that? So what I'm getting to is this. We need to be able to come up with a framework whereby we encourage people of different linguistic, ethnic, racial, economic, cultural backgrounds to be able to voice their genius. And of course, being the 21st century, there are always ways in which we can be able to ensure that the kind of knowledge that has been generated from endogenous knowledge systems gets valorized for the consumption in the global economy. I think to me that is what is fundamentally important. And we can be able to do that with the thing that I talked about, collaborative practice. Is it, and let me bring the issue of collaborative practice within the university. When we are designing, tell me, which is one of the most popular programs at VUT? Course. Which degree program is very popular at Valley University? Engineering. Let's say civil engineering. Let's say if we are designing a curriculum for civil engineers, okay? Have we been able to consult stakeholders who at the end of the day are consumers of the knowledge that we apply civil engineering unto in designing the curriculum at Valley University of Technology? What I'm saying is this: we need to have conversations that bring on board people who are the ultimate consumers of this knowledge. Again, it's a fallacy that there wasn't engineering in the indigenous African communities. There were structures. Can we be able to talk with, like, the city in Timbuktu? To be able to create the city in Timbuktu, a lot of engineering went into that. Can we be able to talk with people, okay, generations, who this kind of knowledge has been bequeathed unto, and be able to design a curriculum of civil engineering in African universities that can be able to integrate some of these things? There are structures across Africa, okay? The pyramids, some of the most auspicious structures ever built by man are in Africa. So that's the idea. Collaborative practice and collaborative rationality brings all stakeholders into the table, and they contribute what it is that they have got to contribute. And then on the basis of that, we can be able to synthesize knowledge and be able to structure programs. And let me repeat something that I said. When I was confronted with this kind of question, when George Muvalo told me that I should come and talk, I said, what is one concept that I can be able to use to synthesize these kind of disparate ideas? Social justice, which is about redress and ensuring people live dignified lives. The notion of African languages as codes of knowledges that have been handed down through generations, some heroic, some deeply disturbing, and the notion of the public university. And that is why when I was trying to do that, I filtered the entire concept to the notion of service delivery. Because when we deliver services to the people, then we can be able to ensure that we do redress. Okay? Because social justice is about fairness. It's creating a more fairer world. Can a child in northern Kenya, in Turkana, be able to access education the same way a child in Santan is being able to access education? And consequently meet at the Valley University of Technology, whereby both of them stand an equal chance to become super engineers, okay? To be able to design the next rocket. Because why should an African country be participating in the International Space Program? So those are the ideas that you're talking about. Can we be able to create opportunities for people to be able to participate and be able to exploit their native genius? Okay? So the issue of one African language, I'll never go for that. Okay? The ideas that you have got, and I said it, as I don't want to take a lot of time because I'm also supposed to be rushing to the airport. The issue is this. Can we be able to create an ecology of languages whereby different languages can be able to play different roles? Let me give an example, a very simple example. Think about a car. Suppose the wheel wanted to be the steering wheel. Suppose the steering wheel wanted to be the piston. Suppose the piston wanted to be the wiper. What happens? The idea is that each of these components play an extremely important role in the entire system that ultimately becomes a car and which executes what cars should do. And that's the way I see the entire ecology of African languages, is that we need to be able to appreciate what each and every language has got to contribute. There will be those kind of languages that will be used in the global dynamics, in the knowledge economy. But at least let not any language thrive on the graveyard of other languages, if I've got to paraphrase Ngoge wa Thiong'o. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I completely agree with our speaker that we need to look at an ecology of languages. Because the question asked by the gentleman, the one about the domination of one ethnic language and what role our leaders post-colonialism played in the demise of some of the languages. Part of the problem, and this is why I'm saying that we need to look at history as well as languages. Part of the problem is that post-colonialism in the independent state, we use the European approach towards nation formation. So if you look at the development of nation formation in the 17th and 18th century in Europe, it was formed on the basis of a common administration, a common language, a common religion, which often was either Catholic or most of the time Catholic or whatever the other dominant religion was. But it didn't mean that there were not in, say, Germany, other dialects. There were quite a lot of different other ones that were then forcibly molded into a nation state with one single language. And other languages then were either suppressed or they died a natural death. So, for example, if you look at today countries like Spain, they still have a problem of, what's this province that's always going, Catalonia. The Catalans are still fighting for independence from Spain because on the basis of their language. So the question is that what we then did in Africa in a situation where the borders were arbitrarily drawn. So across the border would be people that's Tonga speaking at this side, but there's a border because there's a river or because of some reason that they thought in Berlin, they then drawn the borders. And within that we had, even within that border, we had this rich diversity. And what we then do is to superimpose the view of nation formation onto this diversity. And that is part of the problem that we face. And I think that when we talk about human rights and we're talking about the evolution of the African state, it is about looking at how do we find a way of celebrating that diversity in how we build and formulate the nation state. And I think that over the 50-odd years of independence, the debate about language and development, the debate about mother tongue education, and all of those issues is an attempt to say that these things have not worked for us. How do we need to address and find a way of doing it in a way that's different and finding our own solution? So I think that's a debate that's still going on. If one asks who's to blame, yes, if you don't ensure that part of your official languages and the language of administration is your indigenous languages, then yes, your languages will die. If you don't have mother tongue instructions, if your universities don't develop all the local languages, then yes, the languages will perish and our languages will start to die. If as parents, and this is why I think the point about the role of women, because women are the socializers. That's why it's called mother tongue instruction, because women tend to teach languages to their children. If we don't talk to our children in their mother tongue, then the languages will die. So it's a whole complex, as said by the previous speakers, ecology that we need to build around our languages. So I think it's a complex issue, and I think that it's something that we still have to grapple with, and we continue to grapple with. And I agree with him around the question that was raised about 1976 of replacing Afrikaans with another colonial language. I think the issue is as important that we, as South Africa, seem to have not learned from the experiences of other African countries. We sort of repeated the same mistake, and now we're coming back and say, but what happened to our languages? Why is it that only 50%, we're struggling to get 50% of our schools to have African languages as instruction, it's quite shocking. Why 23 years later is this an issue and it isn't something that we addressed from the start? Why is it that we allow Department of African Languages to die in our universities? So we have to come back to those issues and correct it. African spirituality, I think it's an important question, and the depiction, the example of how Da Vinci depicted. One of the countries that's very interesting in terms of the history of Christianity to visit is Ethiopia. Because if you go to Ethiopian churches and to their monasteries, and it has a 1,000-year-long history. And they have a very different interpretation of Christian history. If you look at the symbolism, if you look at the Ethiopian crosses, they're very different from the crosses, the traditional Christian crosses. So I think it's very interesting for us to study what in other African countries in terms of Christianities, but also in terms of African spirituality. And this is why Agenda 2063 say that our common heritage and identity is as important, and it's critical to our fight for peace as well as for prosperity and democracy. And these things are interlinked. I just want to talk about an issue that was raised by this representative, and I think one of the other speakers as well, about the questions about borders. At the time of the formation of the OAU in 1963, there was a debate. And the debate coalesced around what became known on the one hand as the Casablanca group, and then the other group as the Monrovia group. And there was a group of countries that said that we need to, since there are 33 of us that are independent, we need to help the rest that's not independent. But the way that we need to do is to begin by starting to unite. We need to move away from these little nation states that we're trying to build and directly move towards African integration. And then there was another group that said that, well, we've just fought so hard for independence. We want to enjoy the fruit of independence. I want to have my national flag and be the president of the country. It's premature to move towards African integration. And the OAU was a compromise between those positions, because what it said is that, okay, we can't move towards integration immediately as the one group wanted, But they acknowledge, the other crop acknowledge that it's necessary that Africa must unite around common areas. And with the formation of the AU, there was a sense to say that we need to accelerate this process of integration and building a common economy, building common institutions, building common values based on our diversity as a continent. Now, on the borders issues in particular, there's been a long discussion about it, but last year, or about 2 years ago, the AU has taken a decision that it will move towards an African passport. And at the summit last year in Kigali that was held by the AU, the passport was launched and the decision taken that because the AU doesn't have population registers, which is the basis of your passport, the different countries have that. So they can then, like other countries are doing, can then issue the African passport. So South Africa can issue the African passport, or Rwanda, etc., etc. In addition to that, there was also a decision taken that countries should introduce in their national legislation the right for all African citizens to have access visa on arrival for at least up to 30 days. Now, if you look at countries across the continent that have it already, Rwanda is one of the smallest countries in the continent. They haven't been swamped by people wanting to come there. You can wake up this morning and say that I want to go and visit Kigali and see how they live and how the languages are, etc., etc. And you can go and get on a plane, book your ticket, and you arrive in Rwanda and they issue with you a visa on arrival. And what that has done for them is to help them to integrate, to attract business from the continent, as well as to address their skills challenges that they have. Now, one of the issues that we need to do as a continent is to be able to say that we need to, elimination of borders means that you can study in South Africa, your undergraduate, and then you wanted to go and do your master's degree at the Sheikh Anta University in Senegal, and then you go and do a PhD at the Cairo University or at the University of the Makerere University. You should be able to do that and not go through the difficulties of waiting 6 months to a year for a study permit, and then when you get there, you don't know whether your courses are being recognized, etc., etc. So it's in the interest of the new generations to make sure that we build this integrated Africa and that we make the free movement of people much more easier, and also the free movement of skills and exchanges so much more easier. The question about Africa Day and radical transformation, I think it's very relevant. If you look at all of our discussions around Agenda 2063, it's a program of transformation. What we're saying is that we need to resolve the African paradox of that you have a continent that is the richest in the world in terms of mineral resources. In fact, you should look at the minerals that we don't have, because the ones that we have are so plentiful. We have 2 oceans, we have 2 seas, we have over 60% of the world's arable land that's unused. You can go on and on and on like that. But the paradox is that we have a rich continent with poor people. And this is what Agenda 2063 needs to resolve. In South Africa, in Malawi, in the DRC, across the continent, it's a paradox that our generations and your generations have to resolve. How do we ensure that the riches that's in the continent are being transformed in the interests of the people? And the issues that we've been talking here today is important to that. So certainly Africa Day is about radical transformation. It's about radical transformation across the continent, cultural transformation, economic transformation, as well as social transformation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to Phoebe Hospital and Nene Mwaniki. I think, colleagues, our guest speaker has already indicated that actually he's also, time watching a bit because he still has to go back to Bloemfontein very shortly. Perhaps I don't know whether actually I will be taking over from your role, as program directors, and then we just call upon, I think, Mr. Wiseman Jack, to say a few words about this one.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for being part of this interesting discussion. Really, it is important to realize the convergence of social justice and language, whether it becomes an African language, and in this context, of course, it's an African language. I've been listening to the speakers, I've been listening to the comments. I find a lot of interesting debate that can come out of this process. But I tell you, I'll share my only one worry that I had listening to people commenting is the definition of what an African is. I get very, very, very frustrated when I see people looking at one dimension when they define an African. In Africa, we will never be homogeneous in one way or the other. Never. In Africa, we will never stay away from the fact that we are diverse. We are one of the biggest continents in the world. And imagine if we do the same thing as the people do it in Egypt. If we look the same as the people in Egypt look. So the color and language becomes just an element or a component of defining, or rather, just mentioning when you define an African. It's an interesting debate, and I hope through the Office of Social Justice and Transformation we'll debate this further. Because it's worrisome at the university when people just confine the definition of an African to a language. It becomes a joke, to be honest. Or rather, in the color of the skin, because Africans, we have white Africans here. If you go to Algeria, for argument's sake, you will never see the difference between someone who comes from Algeria and someone who comes from England, for argument's sake. And if you look back at the people who started the African movement and the Pan-Africanism in that discussion, color was one issue that was in the factor in the process, because then you marginalize the Africans. Because when we look at Africa as a continent, we say it stretches from Morocco, from Madagascar to Morocco, and from Cape to Cairo. And if you go to Madagascar, you'll find different type of people. And they are Africans. So this is the beginning of a long journey to debate such things and come up, to a common definition of what an African is in our own situation. So it's quite an interesting debate. And I must say, in terms of the theme of the day, the keynote speaker, stated very interesting things that the university should think about and should debate on. Colleagues from the panel, were saying very good things. We have a wealth of knowledge here. What made me excited today, we have international people in our audience that came up with that international perspective. Imagine someone having been an ambassador in Poland, spent time in the AU. There is wealth of knowledge and experience there. We have our brother here, who's a Kenyan South African, brought a lot of experience in. We've got our fellow brothers here, my friend Neville here. He's a historian. What he does is to read history and try and interpret in the context of the times that we're in. So this makes this such an interesting journey that we will take, moving forward. We have our social justice platform here, True Wisdom Valor. He's passionate about social justice. I like the way the keynote speaker highlighted what social justice is. And language plays a role in the context of social justice. I travel a lot around the world, and you go to a place and people speak something that you don't understand. You immediately feel marginalized. Language marginalizes people in one form or the other. That's why the multiplicity of languages in the continent can never be done away with. Because it makes me comfortable if I go to another country and I'm able to express myself. Hence, in the comments of the keynote speaker, he mentioned that we have a South African English, which we speak, which is different from people who speak English in the UK and people speaking English somewhere else. So we can never run away from it. In whatever way we inherited it, but it has become part of us. And some people say and demonize Africans. The language has nothing to do with what people behind it. You know, what was interesting, you know, traveling around and looking, discussing things with people in different countries, and they say, in the world, there was never a language called Afrikaans. It's an African language that belongs to those who decided to go to Africa, and they are part of the process here. And there are a lot of things that we can debate. What I like in the reverse setup is that we can differ and disagree, but what matters most are the facts and validation of certain processes. In these few words, I want to say thank you for the good audience that we had here, and thank you to our guests who are here. This really was the beginning of a long road that we need to take in this university. The University of Technology that doesn't have a faculty that teaches languages. That's the dilemma we have in here. But from now on, we will start talking about these and debating these things and see where they take us. Thank you to the good program directors. You know, they manage everything well. We really appreciate what they've done. And the good thing is that they are the products of Valley University of Technology. You can see that we have people who can hit the road running wherever they are placed. So thank you very much. Those who will travel safely.
Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope you guys enjoyed your day. And please give yourselves a round of applause for attending this wonderful celebration. We are truly grateful, truly grateful.